Great to see you back with us here today. This week, we're challenging you to consider what if you're more powerful than you know. Now, on Monday, we discussed the first part, which is the power of choice. Yesterday, we looked at the power of your words, and today we're going to be talking about the power of the story you tell yourself. Now, we know that we've all had a lot of times, very significantly negative experiences, as well as some significantly positive experiences. Whichever way that falls, we come away from those experiences with narratives, and we use those narratives to explain things to ourselves. And so from that, there's a story that we tell ourselves, and that story may be all true, it may be all false, but a lot of times it lands somewhere in between. I mean, what are your thoughts on this, Wendy?
I think probably most of the time it lands somewhere in between. Just because we're human and we don't necessarily have the perspective or the maturity or the information to have something be all true and all false is kind of hard. So usually the stories that have power have some little bit of truth in them. They might have a lot of falsehood in them, but they have a little bit of truth in them.
And that's what makes them feel true.
That's the problem.
Even if it's 90% false, there's just that grain of something that was true. So then we just don't even question it. We accept it as all true and we just take that into ourselves.
Well, yeah, you use it almost as a filter and you just think, since this part's true, everything else has to be true. You stop thinking or you stop believing or you stop processing what happened and it just is a fact in your head. The stories you tell yourself are the filters you use about who you are, how the world works, who God is, what's allowable in your life and what's not. And so stories are very, very powerful. And the problem is so many of us don't stop to think about the stories that are playing in our heads. And so sometimes they have way more power than they should.
Right. And, when you take those stories, unexamined stories, and they become like this operating system, our beliefs, like you said, about ourselves, God, other people, what's possible for us, how relationships are supposed to work, what my role is, everything. We're telling ourselves a story about it. When something happens, instead of taking that instance and objectively looking at it, we kick into that old story that aligns, and we've created a paradigm that we live from.
Well, your brain loves shortcuts. Your brain is an energy hog and a calorie hog. And if you give it a chance to have a habit, it will take it simply because it's easier. And that's why good habits are so powerful, because they cement really good things in your life. And bad habits are so powerful because they cement not so good things in your life. But stories are like habits of thinking. And a lot of times the stories weren't even put there by you. They were put there by somebody else. The culture around you will tell you stories about who you are and how the world works and who God is. Your friends and family will tell you stories about who you are and who God is and how the world works. And so you need to stop and examine those stories the same way we've been talking about how powerful your thoughts are, what you think about yourself, because those stories lead you to different places. A good, healthy story based in fact and truth will take you to one place, but a bad, unhealthy story based in lies because it made you easier to use by, let's say, a narcissist, will take you to a completely different place. And there's no reason to allow bad stories to have so much power in your mind and in your heart and in your gut.
Right. We may have had stories playing out for years in our lives that took us down a completely different path.
The implication of that is huge.
It really is.
Stories are just a pattern of thinking and feeling woven together and something you wear as you walk around, right? And so you need to examine your stories. You need to examine your thinking. You need to examine your patterns and get a sense of, did I put that there? Did somebody else put that there? Is that even true? And that's when you can start to deconstruct those stories. And the parts that are good and healthy and true, you can keep. And the parts that are not good, not healthy, not true, not holy, you need to get rid of those. They don't serve you. They might have served somebody else, but they don't serve you and they don't take you where you need to go. And so the stories that play in your brain, no matter who put them there, don't have to stay.
Right.
A lot of what therapy and coaching is helping people tell those stories and rip out the bad parts, fix them up, and have them be something useful.
There's something we need to be aware of too, is that we do have a spiritual enemy, and he
Mm.
knows the stories that we've taken
Mhm.
in. He's seen us our whole lives. He and
Yeah.
his accomplices, have seen us our whole lives. And so they've seen what we've been through. They hear the words coming out of our mouth, which is evidence of a particular story, sometimes too, and Satan certainly doesn't want you to get better. So he will often align circumstances to reinforce those stories to the point where we don't question them,
Hmm.
because his goal is to steal, kill, and destroy. And we'll have, even if we're aware that we're telling ourselves something, then we'll quickly do this little rundown of, well, but this and this and this, because it seems accurate, the story we're telling ourselves, but it's
Well, and
not.
if it's familiar, it can feel comfortable, even if parts of it
Mm-hmm.
hurt you or hurt your life. If it's familiar, it can feel really comfortable. Kind of
Yeah.
like everybody's heard the fish doesn't know it's swimming in water because water's everywhere, right? Those stories can do something very similar. You don't even realize that current is pulling you this way. And you
Uh-huh.
don't even realize the water you're swimming in because you've never stopped to examine the story because it's so familiar. It doesn't even occur to you that there is one running, that there's a
Right.
track playing in your mind.
So let's bring this into the very
Hmm.
practical on two different points here. Like, how can we start to challenge the story when we're not even
Hmm.
aware we have a story? How do we challenge the stories we're telling ourselves about particular experiences or whatever? And then how do we start telling ourselves a new story? Like, how do we reframe all that?
There's a lot of different ways to do it. A lot of the people that have used some form of journaling have found
Mm-hmm.
it easier because it gives you this, it's a little further away from you. It feels like it's outside of your own head. You can look
Mm-hmm.
at it, you can see it, you can examine it.
You
And
can
so a lot of
review it
you can
from three
review it.
weeks ago.
That's the
Uh-huh.
important part. You can review
Yeah.
it. You can look at it after it's done. And so if
Mm-hmm.
something happened and you're thinking, I ended up at a place I didn't want to end up, and I don't know why I keep ending up there, that's when you start writing it down. What were
Mm-hmm.
you telling yourself? What were you thinking? What were you feeling? What did that lead you to do? What did you believe about yourself in the moment? What did you believe about God in the moment? What did you believe about the people around you in the moment? What did you believe about your skills or the situation in the moment? You just
Mm-hmm.
start writing it down, and then you can take a break and come at it with fresh eyes an hour, a day, a week later, and it feels far enough away that you can be objective.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at it and go, oh, wait, I think that in that moment I was telling myself that was true. And that's when you can start replacing it. Once
Right.
you have that distance and some objectivity and just some basic facts
Mm-hmm.
about what you tell yourself, that's when you can make different choices and different decisions to replace it. That's a
Right.
process of repetition. You've probably told yourself or heard that story 100 times, 1,000 times,
Mm-hmm.
10,000 times based on how old you are and how old the story is and how often you pull it up, right?
Right.
And so repetition is very, very powerful in changing any habit. You need lots of repetition. So that's part of how you go about telling yourself a new story. You replace the dialogue, you replace the descriptions. Sometimes you can even replace the characters, but you can tell yourself something new about who you are, how you work, where your power
Uh-huh.
lies, what choices you have, what doesn't have to happen, and you can rewrite the story. And once that story is rewritten, everything can change.
Absolutely. It can. Boy, everything that you shared, that was great. And those of you who are listening with us, I hope you're grabbing a hold of some of those
Mhm.
nuggets that Wendy just gave you. Another one is, if you catch yourself and pay attention, catch yourself, things happen, and you're like, why does this always happen to me? There's a
Mhm.
story right there in the middle of
Yeah.
that,
If you're
and
in a
that's the
why does
moment
this
to
keep
journal, like she was
happening?
talking about.
And if you're not a journaler, if you're a talker,
Hmm.
that's when a good friend who loves you and wants the best for you, or a therapist or a coach, is
Uh-huh.
so useful because they can help you take some shortcuts because they'll see things from the outside that you might not have
Yeah.
any ability to see. And they can say, wait, did you know that when you
Hmm.
talk about this, this happens? Or did you hear yourself say that? And that's really, really powerful too. You have to
Right.
get it out of your head and into the real world where it can be examined, either by you on a page because you wrote it down, or by a friend, or like we said, a coach, a therapist. It needs to be examined.
Yeah, my daughter and I will catch each other with things sometimes, be like, well, why did you do it that way? Why didn't you do it that way? And like immediately, you think, I would have been better.
Yeah,
But
I didn't even
what
think
we
I could do
do,
it that way. Like, that's an option? I have that choice?
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
But then it's this joke between us because we'll pause for a second and then go, well, where's the challenge in that? That would have been so much easier if I had done it that way. you know. But this is some really important stuff. This is game-changing stuff, what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
It can set your life on a better path. And it's just these little seeds of these things we're talking about all throughout this week. Over time, where you're headed this direction, you start making those little course adjustments.
Yeah.
And over time, you look back and you're headed to a whole different place, a place better suited to you and of your liking, and a lifestyle and a way of being, and who you become in the middle of that too. It all stems from these things we're talking about this week.
Yeah.
So in that light, we hope that you're going to join us again tomorrow when we talk about part 4 of this. That'll be our Thursday episode. And we're going to talk about the power of overcoming the past. Now, I will say this about that we all say, oh, yes, I want to heal. But a lot of times, we strong women will just pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and just keep on plugging. And we think, again, all these things we've been talking about, the story we tell ourselves is, I don't have time for that, or I don't need that. And again, when we don't emphasize the power that we gain by overcoming the past, and not just a bootstraps thing, there's a lot more involved to that. So I hope you'll come back and join us tomorrow, and you might pick up a few new nuggets for yourself there too. So in the meantime, we encourage you to partner with God. Always partner with Him. Expect to see Him do immeasurably more than you asked or hoped for. Remember, we're here with you. We're going to provide some guidance, some wisdom, and we're going to challenge you to grow, to keep going, and to grow along the way. So focus today on just that 1% better than you were yesterday, because it's all cumulative. You can email us at hello@AnnetteChesney.com. And be sure to check the show description for some links to some other helpful resources. I've got a masterclass in there and some other things that are free that you might really find useful for you. Keep going, because your best is yet to come. We'll see you tomorrow.